Good morning. My name is, I know some of you are probably finding it really awkward, but that is what I just demonstrated. A lot of the Tongan communities, especially with a lot of reverends that have dementia, and it's a lot of things that they experience, the word finding, the perseveration, and also just short-term memory loss and long-term memory loss. But the topic of my presentation is how do we conduct dementia research amongst the Tongan New Zealand community here in Auckland. So this is just an outline to what I want to present. Just going to talk about some background about Tonga and also the patients, and also just to get some context or some flavor of what this is going to. This kind of ties in very well with Sarah Callum's presentation. I'll probably present a little case study, and we'll look at this methodology, which is very culturally appropriate or Tongan appropriate methodology that I'm probably going to use in this study. And then if we have time, we'll look at questions. So this is the Kingdom of Tonga, the only constitutional monarchy in the South Pacific. Has a bit of flavor of democracy, but still it's governed by the king. This is the main island of Tonga, Tongatapu, where I was born and raised. I was born in this hospital here, Viola Hospital, and I grew up here and did all my high school years there. There's about 169 islands, and about 36 of them are inhabited. A population of about 100,000. A huge diaspora migration around the 80s, coming majority to here to New Zealand, and a lot of them went to Australia and America as well. A picture of me in my good old days, the glory days back in Tonga. So the reason why I show this picture is that this was back when I was still scavenging around in Tonga. And I don't know what I'm roasting there, but it must be some kind of meat. The reason why I show this is that we had no concept of dementia. There is no kind of word for dementia. We always thought we had the old elderly person that was roaming around at night, wandering, probably being very forgetful. But we would always term that as kissed by the angel. So dementia was never something that we understood or knew about. And that takes me back to Tonga. Why did we come up with this question, or where was the motivation? So it all started in the Tonga Health Society, or Langimalia Clinic, the first ethnic-specific clinic here in New Zealand, established in the 90s. Dr. Siale Foliaki's father, Leopino, was the founder of this clinic. So myself, Sarah, and Gary, and some of the clinicians in this clinic started to see an increase in Tongan dementia patients. So we thought, maybe let's do some research around this. And this could be probably the foundation as well to help with the prevalence study here in New Zealand. The population of Tongans here that are registered in the census in 2013 is about 60,000 here in the whole of New Zealand. I think maybe unregistered, 100,000 plus, but I don't know about that. This is during the World Cup. And just going back to this, I think it really highlights that a lot of Tongans tend to use the traditional way or methods of healing, and dementia is not really a concept that they understand. So if any cases where anyone responds to hallucinations or that, the first default person to go to is the traditional healer. So a lot of, even though they're educated, a lot of Tongans have PhD, the biggest per capita in the world has a number of PhDs, they still tend to go to the traditional healers. So this is a case study of a 70-year-old Tongan man who's a reverend for a well-known church. The family noticed that he started to progressively start to have short-term memory, forgetting his keys and all of that. But they'll notice at church that he'll be standing around a church, preaching, repeating the same thing. The service usually lasts for only an hour, but he will take more than 3 hours. And the poor people, the congregation would sit there just being really angry and irritable. What happened was, because he started to respond to hallucinations, visual and auditory, the family decided to take him to a traditional healer, which is the default setting for a lot of Tongans. And not only until he started to become very aggressive, which he hit out at the wife, the kids, and also the grandchildren, that it came under our care. So making this to understand what is the worldview of dementia amongst the Tongans. This is just a pinnacle of how all Tongans work around. It's a very hierarchical system. And we have the king, the chiefs, and the commoners. I myself is a commoner. And I think in order to do any research amongst the Tongans, we need to understand this so we can approach it in that way. Because a lot of Tongans, regardless of moving and staying here for many, many years, they still practice this. Very, very hierarchical. And I think the problem with research is that there's not a lot of research around this. But the framework that was coined in 1988 by Professor Helder Thaman was this kind of framework. It's kind of using a metaphorical approach. It's using the production of flowers, or garland of flowers, to present it to the king. So this one is called the Calcutta Research Framework. So this is pretty much kind of like the planning stage. There, we need to talk amongst the groups, like what are we going to plan? What is the best way to do it? How are we going to translate the 1066? And do all of that. And it's very important to actually plan this and to understand who do we address in the family, who do we talk to, who is the talking chief or whatever that is. And then Doli, this is like actually literally meaning taking the flowers off the tree or the plant. So this is where we start to have the data collection. So what would be the best way to collect the data? And we're probably thinking that interviewing families or doing little focus groups might be the way to ascertain that information. Once you get the flowers, you're going to put them or string them together, and that's what they call tui. Or this is where the data analysis is. So that will be the stages that we'll probably go through to kind of look at what results we have. Luva is the presentation of this garland to the king. So it's using all this information to kind of see what way we can present this back to the community. Malie, how does this sit across with the whole Tongan community? Does this resonate within the Tongan community? Is this understandable? And Maafana is it external, like for argument's sake, external validity or generalizable? So this is the kind of the framework that I propose to be using in my research. So in order to have any kind of information gathering, you need to roll the mat out. They call it for fala, of rolling the mat out. And then you have to sit down and you have to respect the hierarchy. And then you sit and talk and listen. But in every Tongan foundation is you have to have respect, you have to have humility and love. So I need to sit there and always remind myself that I am just a young little coconut. So I need to listen to the elders and try and follow that. And just going back to the whole kakala model, it's pretty much doing this, and to the end product, you have a beautiful garland of flowers. So in order for me to get this research done, I'll have to talk with the elders in amongst the Tongan community here in Auckland. Thank you.